Good morning and welcome to another playoff edition of Quick Hits with AQ. I'm back with my guy, Cody Alexander. Cody, thank you again for your time here this week. We kind of teased this at the end of the last one that if things went the way we were hoping and kind of the way that we kind of talked about, if the Bills got by the Jaguars, that this was probably a potential matchup. So thank you again for your time on this one. I know you're a busy guy. You're probably getting out a bunch of Broncos, Bills content yourself. So thanks for joining me this morning, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I thought the game plan went pretty much what we talked about. So that's always nice when you say stuff and it goes the way that you plan. You look really smart. So
yes. And honestly, though, like this happens to me all the time. I don't know, not like to pat myself on the back, but I don't think like the people that follow me on Twitter realize how much work I actually will put in. And because on the show that we do, I only get like 3 questions with the guy, and it's such limited time. You don't really get to show all your work. So this show, I put in a lot of time last week and even bouncing ideas off you and using some of your work. And when you put in the work and then you kind of understand the puzzle that you're seeing, and then that puzzle plays out, it is really rewarding. Because it doesn't always work that way. I'll do some of these matchups and then they throw everything else that you never seen before. And so that one really, I do think if people were watching that one last week, I hope you're tuning in this week, because I think there's no better team that you understand than the Denver Broncos. Obviously, you got the dope throwback hat, best hat game in the content game. And so I'm sure you have a plethora of Broncos hats, but I like that one that you picked today. But it's your team. You, out of all the understanding of defenses and things like that, this has to be the one that you kind of feel the most comfortable with, right?
yeah, I'm not allowed to watch any other game on Sunday other than the Broncos game because my dad comes over and we just drink beer and watch the game. And we can't flip. I can't even flip it to see a score. So I just have to use use the NFL app to figure out what the score is, because he's like, "Hey, Turbeck, we might miss them." I'm like, "Dude, it's a 5-minute commercial break. Like, we're gonna be okay."
Yeah. Well, think about it. So, like, as the guy that I believe is, defensive guru, one of the best out there making content, this has to be quite a time for you to not only to be that, but also be a Broncos fan. Like, I never hide my fandom in my content. Like, I try to be unbiased. I try to deliver good analysis, but I am still a fan at the end of the day. You are also a fan of the Broncos. And so for you to be so involved in defense, and for this team over the last couple of years here to be such a pillar of excellence in the NFL of defense, has to be pretty fantastic timing for you.
Yeah, it's really awesome too. I mean, I think too, both of my boys, I have a 12-year-old, he'll turn 13 here in March, and then I have another one that just turned 8 on Christmas. And so like for them, like this is really that time. If you remember back, like between 8 and 13, that's really when you like pick your team and things like that. So it's nice for me because the Broncos have been terrible really for the last decade. So it's nice to finally we have a legitimate quarterback. Our defense is good, so that helps me out. So it's just fun for them, especially too, because we don't live in the Denver area. I live in Dallas. So it's like, it's really fun for them to be able to like kind of enjoy that with me and my dad.
Yeah. It helps that the Cowboys are no good too.
Yo, yes, we troll. They troll their poppy, who's a big Cowboys fan, and then of course they get to troll all their friends.
I love that. Hey, I'll add real quick before we get into it. My kids are 9 and 7, about to be 10, my oldest, and so kind of in that same age range. But what they don't understand, like, I'm happy they get to experience good football, but there's been a couple of times where like I'm like, God, like you guys have no idea how good we have watching Josh Allen, and they'll be like, oh, he does that stuff all the time, like some incredible play, and they're like, like he does that all the time. Their view of the world is, it's going to come crashing down in the post Josh Allen era for them. All right, let's get into this matchup. We did a lot of work last week, and in my preparation for this, I'm 4 games in. I'm still kind of getting to know this defense. I got a good grasp on Vance Joseph's defense, but it's evolved. But real quick, before we kind of get into specifically theirs, what are some similarities we can, or the Bills and Brady can take from last week's matchup with the Jaguars versus this Denver Broncos defense in like a philosophical lens?
They're going to commit to stopping the run. I mean, that to me is kind of the biggest thing. The other thing too is the running back screens are probably not going to be there this week. That's a big thing that the Broncos are, but the tight ends will be there. So it's kind of more of a flip of like, okay, we had kind of, Cook has really been an engine for them on the screen game. Shakir's been an engine for them. Now we're going to have to really look at like, okay, Cook may not necessarily have a big game this week. Where can we attack this Broncos defense? So philosophically, they're not really similar with the Jaguars, other than this is a defense that's going to be really, really hard to run the ball against.
Yeah. One thing that I kind of jokingly tweeted about was a big weapon for the Broncos is Patrick Surtain and being able to eliminate wide receiver one or a half of the field. And I sort of joked because it's a running thing in Bills Mafia that Brandon Beane has done a really poor job building a wide receiver room, but it's almost like an advantage to the Bills that there is no wide receiver one to take away. But when you look at the data, it's astounding at what he does to whatever side of the field he's on, whoever he's guarding, versus what the rest of the Broncos defense offers up. Is that just in a matchup like this where there's no true number one? I know some Broncos fans have gotten in my mentions that he'll just kind of hang out with Khalil Shakir. I don't see that a ton where they put him in the slot. Is he just going to stay on a half of the field and you just eliminate that and hope that Josh works the other way?
I think against somebody like the Bills, you're going to see him play the boundary corner. And so I know if you're a fan and you're like, the hashes are so narrow, what's the boundary? Okay. It's really interesting because we've shifted to so much zone in the NFL. The NFL defensive coordinators have actually taken almost a collegiate approach in terms of we have a field side and a boundary side, or what we have is a passing strength side and we have a away or a weak side. And so typically they will do that. They will also do it off of where the ball is. I know it's like very minimal, but typically the offense is going to put the best receivers or most receivers to the wide side in the NFL. I know it's like we're dealing with like literally feet. But what you look at with the Broncos is that you do have Surtain, who is essentially a black hole over the number one receiver. I think they're fifth in DVOA against the receiver one. Now, a lot of people pick on Riley Moss, and it's just because he gets so much volume. He does get a lot of penalties. He does get a lot of those PIs, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that they play just so much man coverage. And I think we've talked about this before. When you have man coverage, you get a lot of penalties. You get a lot of pass breakups, but you don't get a lot of interceptions. So I think that's kind of one of the things that you get with the man coverage. So for me, with that receiver two, they're still about 13th. So he is showing that he can play at an above average level. They're elite against the running backs. Where they really struggle is at the linebacker position. So tight ends, they're 18th, I think, in DVOA versus tight ends, which is not really great when you're going against the Bills that have two really good tight ends.
Yeah. How much is injury played into that in the middle of the field with linebackers and even safety?
This has been a concern. Now, this has been a concern for if any Broncos fan will tell you, yes, our defense is elite, but there is major concerns at the linebacker spot. Singleton being hurt, Greenlaw being hurt at times. Sternard is an average linebacker at best. So you look at this, and the tight ends have become a problem. We can even go back. I remember when Brandon Jones was healthy, the way that they play their defense going corner over, meaning that if we get two tight ends on one side, two receivers on the other, they will flip that. Giants are a great example of that. I think the Giants ran a wheel route out of like a YY set. So basically two tight ends paired together. Brandon Jones forgets that he's actually now a cover three corner. Ends up being touched on you. So you've seen situations like that. I think what they will do, and really what they've done now in the past two seasons, is simplify the defense in terms of like, we're going to play a little bit more zone. We're not going to play as much man. And as we've gone through, this happened the exact same last year where they kind of went through that time where they had a bunch of injuries, ran more cover three, then they got back into man coverage as everybody started to come back.
Yeah. And let's go into, we talked a lot about last week about some of the looks and pressures that the Jaguars can generate. And they hit Josh Allen a ton, right? But that it wasn't generating sacks. So like the way they get pressures is muddying up looks, right? Giving you some looks and sending that extra guy. And that sort of used to be a little bit of Vance Joseph's game with a lot of blitzes, but he's evolved over the years here since, I know the Bills have had success against the Vance Joseph defense, but that defense, you can't extrapolate years past to where this defense is now. He has really kind of shifted, and it's more, the stats speak for themselves. Number one sack rate, number two pressure rate, number two in pass rush productivity, and they're not sending a ton of extra. It's just these like simulated pressures, muddying things up, giving you looks. What does that do to an offense? How do you identify this stuff? Because it seems like these simulated pressures are driving QBs crazy league wide, and it just buys you that split second. But to the other point I want to make, I think that might play into some of the success tight ends have had. When you're bringing everybody up on the line, it's hard for those linebackers to draw. You kind of create space for the tight ends in the middle of the field in that area. So while it's a strength, is it also a weakness?
Well, let's start with the front structure first. This is really a three-headed monster where you have Benito, Jonathan Cooper, and then you have Zach Allen. Cooper and Benito have two of the quickest get-offs in the NFL. Myles Garrett is obviously kind of the leader in the field house in that sense, but then like literally right behind them. In fact, Cooper at one point during the year had a quicker get off than Benito, which is insane because if you watch Benito, you're like, oh, he's unblockable. If you leave him alone or you don't chip him. So I think what that's going to happen too is like part of the problem with tight ends with the Broncos has been this chip mentality by a lot of teams. We saw it in some of these games before, like Gainwell last night with Pittsburgh would stay in and empty on third down, chip, and then sometimes he would release. Now they didn't get explosives out of it because he's not Christian McCaffrey. Sure. But what you see is like that delay gets those guys' eyes away. So the linebacker sees a chip, he gets his eyes away, so he's going to try and sink a little deeper in zone coverage, especially on third down, which is what the Broncos typically do. Early down pressure, late down simulated pressure, or some sort of a coverage disguise. And so you see that the tight ends are kind of the same boat. That's how people really attack the Broncos with that. So to me, when you look at this matchup, the simulated pressure part, they're really about a league average on simulated pressures. It's not a large part of what they do, but they've really used Hufanga. They're pretty much an all-pro safety as kind of that tool, getting him to be down near the box and then sending him, especially on early downs. That's where you really see that. The reason why simulated pressures are so tough is that when you get a defense that's really good at them and they'll mix and match, like sometimes it will be a linebacker, sometimes it will be a safety. They don't just have like a simulated blitz path that they use all the time. Then that's when it becomes really difficult. But for the Broncos, what it really is, it's just a diversification of their scheme because they are so much close post, they are so much five-man front, and they play so much cover one that those simulated pressures are really your changeup. So instead of throwing heat all the time, where are you going to throw that changeup or that off-speed pitch? That's where the simulated pressures come into play.
Yeah, I love that. Dude, Hufanga is becoming one of my favorite non-Bills players to watch here, watching these 4 games. I've kind of kept an eye on him here this year. I know you've done some stuff on Twitter about him, and holy cow, what a game changer. And you can tell the guy studies film. Like he sees plays, diagnoses them real time. What a weapon for them to have on this one. But I love that you brought up sort of the comparison to Cleveland, because they are also up there. When you look at every chart on match corridors or whatever, it's Cleveland and Denver and a couple of, Seattle's kind of up there, all these teams. But the Bills did a really nice job this year, Joe Brady did, of neutralizing Myles Garrett in that game, right? He was chasing the sack record. They really made it a point to emphasize staying away from him, completely kind of taking him out of the game. You can't do that with Denver because of the multiple, you talk about the 3-headed monster. So you can't just focus on one side of the ball and just stay away. That makes it difficult. But a nice little wrinkle that Brady threw into this last game with the Jacksonville Jaguars, with Ty Johnson being inactive. He's kind of your third down back, sort of more in pass protection. They used, and shout out to Eric Turner for pointing this out here online. Not a lot of people saw it. They were using the wide receivers instead of tight ends and stuff to come in and chip. I'm assuming we see more of that kind of wrinkle from Brady in a game like this. I know Gabe Davis is out, but you still have some big Shavers type of guys. Some of these guys that can just get, sometimes it's just getting a hand. It doesn't even have to be a big wide receiver. Shakir, just getting a hand on some of these guys. Do you think that could be a way they can impact some of that get off? Yeah,
because too, like Cooper, see, the thing with Garrett is that you putting a receiver on a 285-pound lineman. Now we did see Jacoby Myers take out Bosa, which is a little bit, to me, that's those blindside blocks. I don't care how big you are. It's if you got a guy that's going fast and you have no idea, you're gonna get put on your butt there.
Yeah. Is that an illegal block, by the way? Is that a crackback? They're not full speed
because it's attached to the box. Okay. It's not.
Yeah.
If it was where if it was like a tunnel screen and he came outside in, that's when they're going to call that. But no, if you are really standing near the box, he really only has to take a couple steps, really solid up, and then just kind of take that on. I think with Myles Garrett, what you saw was just the size advantage. Like you're going to have a hard time really chipping with him with a receiver. So what you end up doing is using a tight end or use the running back. With Cooper and Benito, these are not the largest human beings. So you can pretty much say, okay, we can kind of chip with the receiver, kind of do what the Rams have done for a long time with their kind of big receivers, chip with them and then kind of move off. It also gives you a little speedier guy on that little dump off that everybody loves, like the little twirl route where I kind of chip you and then I kind of spin out and then just find space and sit. So I think that to me is where I think that the Bills could use that, because too, getting the tight ends out is going to be a key factor in this game.
Yeah. And what do you think on, let's kind of pivot to how can the Buffalo Bills offense attack this Denver's defense? I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit here. My view just from watching is a little bit, this is where I find a similarity, even though philosophically they're different than the Jags. I think the mode to attack is still pretty similar, right? You're not going to run into the teeth of this defense. You're not probably going to win a ton of one-on-ones, especially against Surtain. You're going to maybe get some deep shots if you can handle the pressure. I think there's some deep shots available. Like you said, if it's man coverage, there's going to be a lot of chasing. There's going to be a lot of trail technique. You might even just throw some D shots for some DPI type looks, just to try to create some big plays. But I think attacking the horizontal aspects of this defense as well as vertical, just stay away from sort of this middle in the run game, which is where the Bills want to win. Am I right there? Or is there other ways to attack this defense?
No, I think you're right. If you really look at how is this matchup going to play out, the Bills are really good against closed post coverages. So they have positive EPAs in both cover one and cover three. Well, what do the Broncos do? They run cover one and they run cover three. So I think if the Broncos are going to have some sort of a changeup, if they believe that they can stop the run with 4, they're going to play a lot of nickel, and then they're going to play a lot of kind of split field coverage. And so that's just not something they necessarily do outside of later down. So I always think too of like coaches chasing ghosts. At this point in the season, you kind of know who you are. You know what you're doing. I think if there's going to be some sort of a schematic flip, you might do that in the Super Bowl or the championship game. I think in this, you got to just win this game. It's at home. I don't think they're going to change the way they do it. I do think that we'll see split field coverage rates go up a little bit, just because I don't want to be in cover one against Josh Allen when he runs the ball. My quarterback players now, 20, 25 yards deep. I don't want to play a lot of cover one because I don't want that isolation out there. And I know that, look, elite quarterback play will defeat elite coverage, bottom line. So to me, I think that's where, if we're going to see anything, it's going to be maybe Denver plays a little bit more split field coverage. And then when they do get that single high, you nailed it on the head. They've got to take advantage of that, because in the box, like Denver's really good against what the Bills want to do, which is kind of that duo run concepts, inside zone. That's what the Broncos are really, really good at. And so to me, that's going strength on, kind of strength on strength. You don't want to do that. You really need to take those shots. And that's where the Bills can take advantage of this defense.
Yeah. And we did see this last weekend, like Jacksonville, Bills really tried to run into the teeth of that defense over and over again. I do think actually I gave credit to Brady, because I think it's really hard for a coordinator to not have success and continue to stay balanced. And even though you're not having the success and the success rate's not there and the yards aren't there, there is a unquantifiable aspect to continuing to show those and working to do that. And so many times Brady has gotten away from it. You become one dimensional, and you don't want to do that against Jaguars. You don't want to do that against the Broncos. So I do think they have to do some running into the teeth of this defense just to keep that as an option. Maybe you break one with Cook, try to keep him involved in this game because he's such a strength. But yeah, they have to kind of switch some stuff up there. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy guy, but you've been talking about how kind of this Denver team plays. Could it be any more polar opposite of how Sean McDermott wants to play like these two defenses seem to not mirror each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so this is the Bills. I mean, for really since McDermott has been there, have been a split field defense. Now they've upped their cover 3 usage, but I think that has a lot to do with, and we've talked about this before multiple times. Like the run game, you got to put guys near the box. So I think
Oh, I lost you there.
Opposite defenses, just in terms of front structure, in terms of coverage structure. The Bills want to play light box. They want to have a 4 down front. They want to play nickel, and they want to play split field coverage as much as they can. The Broncos want to play a lot of 5-man fronts. They're going to blitz you early and often, and then they want to play a lot of sticky coverage in cover 1 in their match 3 that I think they've talked about ad nauseum. So that to me has kind of been, when you look at this stylistically, these are really different. But I think offensively, the philosophies are still really there. And really, Brady
comes from the Peyton tree, right?
So I think it's kind of like, what would the younger Peyton look like, right? Like you mentioned it about keeping, like, I'm not going to abandon the run. That's one of the things I think that with the Broncos, especially, will frustrate you sometimes as a Broncos fan, is just like they will run into heavy boxes. We're getting 3 yards, 2 yards a gain. It doesn't matter. We're going to stay in 21 personnel. We're going to put the fullback out there. We're going to get in 12 and 13. We're going to really try and run the ball. We're not the Rams or the Seahawks where we're going 12 and 13 to try and pass. And then, we're just going to try and take those deep shots down to Sutton and some of these other receivers, these kind of tall, lanky receivers. And so I think, stylistically, offensively, it's going to be like the Spider-Man meme. They're both going to be pointing at each other. Obviously, it'll be a different flavor because of the roster. Then you look at defense, and it's like complete opposites of what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And you've got some content coming on some of the Buffalo Bills defensive stuff here this week, right?
Yeah, so Thursday on Match Quarters, you don't have to be a paid subscriber. Just go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to drop a free. I'm going to actually break down that Jaguars game. They did a masterful job. I know we've been talking about this on Twitter. They did a masterful job with all the cover 2 looks, not just one, all of the looks. We even had cover 2 Sims. We have, just regular non-traditional Tampa rolls with 4-man rush. We had 2-man with a poach tag, and really bookended by a very simple Tampa. I thought it was just, this is modern football. You have a simple Tampa 2 drop interception to start the game. And then you have a more, complex 2-man with a poach tag pick to end the game. It was booked by that. I thought there were also some really good examples of them kind of using the Fangio way of playing it, with a cover 2 to one side. They have quarters on the other, but it's quarters, it's palms. I know this is going to be very confusing.
Palms, man stuff.
Yes. So it looked really good. So I will be breaking that down so look for that on Thursday. And then if you are a big YouTube person, that will be on the Match Quarters YouTube channel on Thursday as well.
Yeah. To your point, you don't have to be a subscriber, but you should be. The content you do is fantastic. I used a lot of your content, and actually I don't want to spoil your content, but man, I had a bunch of arguments about that last pick on Twitter the other day of people trying to tell me what it was and what it wasn't. And luckily I do get a lot of your content, and I've, in the off season, you did such a good job of breaking down every type of defense. And I dug into those and just kind of doing chores around the house and listening and taking that in. I learned so much. And I think you are right. Like you saw Cole Bishop and Hancock switch. So Bishop was on the weak side. You saw a similar hand signal to what Poyer gave earlier on a poach look that he didn't necessarily go with because the wide receiver leveraged a little different on that side. So kind of real quick, could you just describe that was what you're saying it was? It was a cover 2 man, and then Bishop sort of played that poach perfectly. And actually Jacksonville kind of played right into their hands on with the route concepts too.
Yes. So here, just as an overstatement, just a coach's note, I know people get really tired of hearing Fangio's name all the time, but he is the king of the split field coverages. And a lot of these things are kind of trickling through the NFL. It is a copycat league. And so you're seeing a lot of these like coverage rotations, like we just talked about cover 8, having the cover 2 side away from or to the passing strength instead of away like your traditional cover 6. So your quarter, half, it's now half, quarter. But to your point with 2-man is having quarters rules built into your 2-man. So what we're seeing really is a diversification and kind of just a mixing of coverages, hybrid schemes. And hybrid gets thrown around. I'm the worst at it. I call everything a hybrid. But that's what it really is you're quarters rules in cover 3, you have quarters rules in cover 2, and then you have quarters rules in 2-man. And typically when you say 2-man, people think of Madden, lock up everybody underneath, deep half on the other side. Right. But if I get 3-by-1, and especially when they sit the running back in a slot, like, again, if you watched the game last night, you saw Gainwell a ton in that slot to chip the defensive end and then move to something else. You're going to lock the backer on that. What you're doing is allowing that backside safety to turn into a deep backstop. So you knew that the Jaguars had to pass the ball down the field at the end of the game. I know I'm probably going to get some sort of deep crossing route. We're playing man coverage with, leverage. He's going to run away. We don't want it. Look, defenses, no matter what, over time are going to always lose the track meet. So where can I create a backstop? That's where Cole Bishop comes in. Lawrence didn't see it, didn't expect it. He thought he had 2-man. He thought he had the open middle of the field, ends up throwing it. We do get the sticky coverage and tips and overthrows. You got to make sure that you get those, and that's what we got.
Yeah, great job by Trey too, leveraging him inside on that one. That was a vet move. He knew what was coming. He even talked about it in the post game. He felt him kind of push off, knowing he was coming on the inside there, and just broke on the ball. So you love to see that stuff. And I love McDermott gets a lot of flack for being conservative, I think, because he wants to run the ball and he wants to play good defense, but it is very progressive in how he displays these coverages and where he is. And he talks about it all the time. He talks about it a ton this offseason of this change, and you're talking about those hybrid defenses, has really been forced by NFL offenses. Their evolution and their change has made defensive coordinators have to kind of break those rules and kind of mush them together.
Yeah, so they know your rules now. I think the trend that you're seeing now in the NFL and at the upper levels of college is that they're taking the quality control coach that typically would go to the offense, that's an offensive guy, and they're taking kind of the lower guy on the rung. Very smart, not low as in he doesn't know anything, low as in like it's just not his turn to be a position coach. They're going to put him on the defensive side, and then the defensive guy is going to go on the offensive side. And so he just literally is he's your LLM in the meeting. How do I defeat quarters coverage? Oh, coach, this is what you do. This is how you would do it. This is how we attack it. These are the rules for this. Oh, okay. Here we now implement it. So you've really seen on both sides of the ball where it's like, okay, we've got to really diversify. We've got to hybridize these concepts. If you run simple structures in the NFL in a sense of just like, we only do this. This is our rules, and we just have better players than you, and we'll figure it out. You will get beat because the offense is look, this is an offensive game. And so that's really where you have seen this and kind of the growth within really quarter structures within a lot of these coverages that you wouldn't think are quarters.
Yeah. Anyways, man, I love it. I learn something every single time I talk to you, whether it's through DMs or here. So I appreciate your time so much. I know you talked about the Bill stuff. Anything else you got coming up this week for fans to digest and where they can find you?
Well, I think one of the best examples of kind of bucking the trend, and I call it the anti-defense, we saw it last night. So if you watched the Houston Texans and you're like, yeah, it just looks really simple and it's just a 4-2-5 and they're just running cover 3 quarters and cover 1. It is a little bit more nuanced than that, actually a lot. But when you're that simple, there's actually a lot of nuance. I wrote about the league's anti-defense on Monday. That's a really good article to look at. Again, I give a free preview out. So if you just want to search up Bills and read what I've got on the Bills, I've covered the Bills multiple times, especially their up use of cornerback pressures, which I think we saw again against the Jaguars. Saw a Chucky. If you're wondering what Chucky is, it's a double corner pressure. So that I saw that. Made sure to clip it. That'll be on Twitter at some point. So, but yeah, no, that's what I've got going on this week. And then Thursday I will have the Bills Jags breakdown, and then Friday I'll have something on the Seahawks defense, just covering. I wanted to make sure I covered at least one of them, not the hometown Broncos, but at least one of the teams with a bye.
Yeah, I love it, man. You're doing great work. I don't think people understand in the world of like fantasy sports and betting, it's that defense sort of just gets left kind of to rot and nobody's really talking about it. So as a guy that just loves to dig into defense, you're one of my favorites. So I appreciate your time here. Appreciate you coming on. I hope this is a good game this weekend, regardless of the outcome, and everybody stays healthy. I like both these teams. So many times you get into these matchups and the fan bases are so toxic, and I haven't met like a mean Broncos fan yet. So I'm going to enjoy this week in the ramp up.
Yeah, me too. As you know well and all, I cover all 32 teams, so I'm a fan, not a fanatic. I wore the hat just kind of as tongue in cheek today because we are talking about my team and your team. So yes, no, but I'm excited about it. I think we're going to see a defensive battle. I think it's going to be a little bit low scoring. I do actually think the Bills defense is set up to attack Bo Nix. Broncos struggle against cover 2 and these middle of the field closed shells. And so if they can establish the run, get the Bills into cover 3, then that's where you're going to see the success. It's kind of the opposite of the Bills where they need you to loosen up so that they can then, really attack that. So the Broncos will have to loosen up in order to kind of cap what the Bills are doing. So I am excited about this game.
I love it. And thank you for all you guys here. Join us on a Tuesday in the middle of the morning. I hope that you don't get in trouble at work. So thank you guys to everybody that's out here supporting us. Keep in mind, I know Greg's going to do a spot with Ben Albright later this week. And then obviously we have our show Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, breaking down the entire matchup. So make sure you're checking that out. Film Room's doing a bunch of work. Anthony's doing a bunch of work. Air Raid Hours back up. So Cover 1, we are in full effect. Hopefully we get more than this week, but if we don't, we still got you. Cody, again, thank you for your time and everyone for joining us. We appreciate you, and we are